video that has gone viral, giving a quick notice to Igbo people to leave Yoruba land as a senseless and one capable of causing destabilization in the country. This has come at the same time that his Ogun State counterpart, Dapo Abiodun, also dissociated his state from the purported quit notice. In the video, a group that goes by the name Young Yoruba for Freedom called on Igbos residing in the southwest to leave the region. However, both governors, in different statements, resolved to protect the lives and property of not just Igbos, but also those of non-Yorubas living and working in the southwest of Nigeria. What is happening?
Do you know, all this reminds me of is Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, the opening paragraph. You know that, it's the best of times and the worst of times. The age of wisdom, the age of foolishness, the epoch of belief, the epoch of
disbelief,
incredulity, the season of... We don't continue?
Yeah.
Okay, it reminds me of that. Right now we're seeing two different forces at play. Yeah. We're seeing the indomitable nature of Nigerians and our kind of attempt to unify after the huge tumult that we witnessed recently. We're seeing the right-minded citizens trying to rally around the most vulnerable, trying to resolve to move on from this stronger and better together. And then we're also seeing this other group on the opposite end of the spectrum who are determined to cause mischief and sow dissent amongst our ranks. And it's completely unacceptable. I want to say it's my urge to ignore or dismiss people like this with their silly videos and their silly ultimatums. But it would be dangerous to do that. It's actually, at a time like this, with the level of volatility that we're seeing, it is worth addressing, which is why these two state governors had to address it. They did the right thing in just not ignoring it. Nothing like this can be ignored, because with the way things are going, the current mobocracy, well, no longer current, thank God, it's been brought under control. But last week's mobocracy, anything could happen. This person had the audacity to release a video saying that Igbos would be searched. The cars would be searched, and if anybody who is Igbo is found in the car, this and that would happen. Meaning, what state authority would be searching cars? None at this point, looking for Igbos. So what that suggests is actually that some kind of parallel security force would be on the street with checkpoints. It's actually extremely disturbing and worth condemning. You can't ignore things like this. They were right to do that.
Well, the best of times, the worst of times. That's the most apt description of what is happening now. In terms of the best of times, we have seen young people, ordinary Nigerians, the masses, the poor of Nigeria, saying certain things are wrong with Nigeria. And those things that are wrong with Nigeria will need to be corrected, whoever is responsible. It's not just about Buhari. It's about how the Nigerian state itself is organized. The people are asking for an end to bad governance. They are asking for an end to injustice, inequity, and those fault lines that President Muhammadu Buhari identified, but he did not explicate for that in his October 1 address to Nigerians. And Nigerians are saying collectively, not just the young people, also the older people. After all, we've seen mothers going out onto the streets and saying, look, the reign of impunity in Nigeria must end. But it is also the worst of times, because it has shown us certain problems that we have to deal with. Those fault lines that I referred to earlier, about ethnicity, about religion. What are we dealing with now? In the intro that you read, one character called Adeyinka grandson, who is based in England, who in 2019, I guess was arrested or indicted or, reprimanded for promoting terrorism, for promoting hate. He goes online and he says, Igbos must leave Lagos, or else, which has become a very popular phrase now in Nigeria, something will happen on Monday, October 26th. What is going to happen? Nothing. Because yesterday, 2 days ago, Voices of Reason in Yoruba land came forward, the governors, Professor Wole Soyinka, Afenifere, and they said, look, no, it should be ignored. In fact, Professor Wole Soyinka used the phrase that message is coming from a sick mind, from a lunatic fringe.
Yes.
So who is Adeyinka's grandson for him to speak on behalf of the Yoruba nation, as Afenifere would like to refer to it? So I think it's a statement that should be ignored by Igbo people living in Lagos. Lagos is a cosmopolitan city. Lagos is a melting pot of Nigeria. This is the same Lagos where a northerner had been Minister of Lagos Affairs in the First Republic. This is the same Lagos where Igbo men have been commissioners.
Yes.
Ben Akabueze and others. This is the same Lagos where Igbos have been members of parliament representing what is it called? Amuwodofin axis, Ajangbadi, all those areas, and this is also the same Lagos where an Igbo man, Joe Igbokwe, was spokesman of what you call a Yoruba party for more than 14 years. And his own Igbo people have been saying, oh, he has become a Yoruba man. He has not become a Yoruba man. He's still an Igbo man. Yeah. He's a Nigerian. Yeah. But he's just an Igbo man who plays his politics in Lagos. At the moment, he's the Igbo man in charge of drainage in Lagos. Some people, although derisively say, Joe Igbokwe, this is his drainage they have given to you. But that's beside the point. The truth of the matter is that Lagos is a microcosm of Nigeria. Yes. It's not a place where one grandson, what kind of name is even that? Exactly. Would just come up and say, Igbos must leave Lagos. Igbos are not leaving Lagos. We are all here together. Yeah. And I guess he's saying that because, this strain is perpetually there. But in Lagos, it's a melting pot, as I said earlier. However, the ethnic dimension of this NSAS, which has become politicized heavily. You will recall that there's also a video that has been going around in which Nnamdi Kanu of IPOP reportedly advised Igbos in Lagos to attack Yoruba interests. Now, the Lagos state government has condemned that. There have been all kinds of statements about fake news, but what we need to say is that everybody that is involved should stay away from ethnicity and religious politics, because that is not what this hashtag NSAS protest is all about. That was never the original intention of the young people of Nigeria who went in that direction. NSAS, End Insecurity Now. The Feminist Coalition over the weekend issued a very enlightened statement, which was even better than the statement that was issued by the president of Nigeria. And what they're saying is about how to move Nigeria forward. I think any effort by anybody, any party, any group, any so-called leader of any movement, whether it's a grandson or a grandparent, trying to destroy Nigeria with ethnic and religious sentiments should be deplored, should be condemned, should be rejected. And I would like to commend Afenifere, Professor Wole Soyinka, the Lagos State government, governors in the Southwest region, who have all come forward to say, no, this is not Igbo versus Yoruba. This is not Yoruba versus Fulani. This is about the soul of Nigeria. And it is about a discussion around how we can save Nigeria.
It's always so sad. People who claim to be educated resorting to that kind of...
And which is very... I'm not surprised. Like Wole Soyinka said in a statement released over the weekend, he talked about identity theft.
Yeah, he released two statements. That was the first one. The second one was about this attempt to... He
talked about identity theft, the proliferation of fake news, and how some people have tried to peddle the lines of, the things that divide us. But for people like, please, I've got word for you. Nigeria is greater than any one man, and united will stand, please. Friday and Saturday of last week saw total devastation in Nigeria's Cross River State, where hoodlums went on rampage and attacked several property belonging to politicians and serving and retired. Houses and cars and business interests of the targets were not spared during the orgy of violence. Warehouses were also broken into, where food items meant to serve as COVID-19 palliatives were stored. The state governor, Ben Ayade, reacted to this development.
To bring to the attention of Cross Riverians that we're enforcing a 24 hours curfew every day until we see that there's improvement in the security situation. Let me once more thank the majority of Cross Riverians who have predominantly obeyed the curfew. The curfew became necessary, occasioned by the massive looting by people that I believe have a very little clue of the cumulative implication of their action.
We spend all our day throughout the night, no sleep. We have to secure this territory because coming to this territory, they are going to do a lot of harm to this territory because we know most of the big men are staying here. Like the governor's house is here, Dansuki house is here, and all the rest of them. You can see this bishop house. So all throughout the night, we could not sleep. We were here awake.
I think the hoodlums have hijacked the protest, and as you can see, the state treasure is no longer safe. So that's why we, the youth of this area, were coming out to do our best to make sure that we secure what we have.
So far, so good. It's been good. They've been vigilant since yesterday, and they are still on guard to forestall anything that anybody's trying to do in this area.
Right, this is another story, and I can say for free, this happened all over the country.
It really did.
Almost everywhere. Things were looted. I mean, you ask, how did we get here?
It was just the most shocking rampage, but we know how we got here. We know exactly how we got here. Just the negligence on the part of the government, federal and state, because we have to also address the fact that the criminal activity that was targeted against hardworking Nigerians is completely unacceptable. But on the other hand, we saw looting of warehouses with COVID-19 palliatives that were meant to be distributed to the people during the lockdown. That did not happen. What kind of mind decides to hoard palliatives that were meant for the poorest and the most vulnerable among us? What kind of grasping avarice is that? When those warehouses were broken into, I was completely disgusted. So I'd like to separate those two. Looting is always a criminal act, but I do separate those two in my mind at least. The attacks on fellow hardworking Nigerians and their businesses and livelihoods is one thing. The looting is actually the people taking what belongs to them. It should never have been hoarded in the first case. But Cross River State there was a list of 52 different properties that were vandalized, destroyed, looted. It's staggering. I just want to know, where were the security agencies at that time that such a rampage, and it seemed really coordinated, such a coordinated rampage could have occurred without any impediment? 52 properties.
Just like that.
Yes, well, Calabar is of special interest with me, for me, having grown up there at a time in my life. And, 52 locations, as Tundum pointed out, including the homes of politicians, properties belonging to private persons who are not even connected with government. What we have seen here is an extension of the protest. The argument that the protest has been hijacked was clearly proven in Calabar, because there was also an attack on the neuropsychiatric hospital. At the neuropsychiatric hospital, persons receiving mental health treatment were freed, beds were stolen, and then you will be wondering, why the attack on a neuropsychiatric hospital? Malls, supermarkets were also attacked, warehouses were also attacked. And then, of course, you had a special focus on politicians. The home of Senator Gershom Bassi was attacked. In his family house, there was somebody who was even saying, take whatever you can take, but don't set the house on fire because of neighboring houses. The home of Senator Victor Ndoma Egba was also set ablaze. And these are persons that did not have COVID-19 palliatives in their homes. Supermarkets, Valumat, Calabar Shopping Mall, the whole city went up in flames, literally. Now, what does this signify? But it is not only Calabar. In Taraba, we have reports of people also attacking, politicians' homes and also palliatives warehouses. In Lagos here, in Ikorodu, the home of the majority leader of the House of Assembly was also attacked. He said he was keeping the palliatives for his birthday for him to distribute them. In Ibadan, Senator Teslim Folarin's house was also attacked, where they carted away refrigerators about 300 motorcycles. Senator Teslim Folarin says those materials were being kept for the empowerment of the people. Here in Lagos, a COVID-19 warehouse it was also attacked. Not one, not two. But the Lagos State government says those palliatives in those warehouses do not necessarily belong to the Lagos State government, that they belong to the private sector coalition known as CACOVID, which in September, specifically on September 22, provided these materials to be distributed. And those materials have not been distributed up till now. In Ilorin, the explanation in Kwara State, where a COVID-19 palliative warehouse was also attacked, the explanation is that the government was waiting for the federal government to commission those palliatives before they will be distributed in the last 1 month. So you have two sides to it. Warehouses being attacked. The argument from civil society is that, well, you cannot blame anybody for attacking those warehouses because the people merely took what belongs to them, and that government has no right to keep those materials, bags of rice, sacks of gari, packs of indomie and noodles and whatever in those warehouses without giving the people. But the question is, how about logistics? Suppose these states have not worked out the logistics. But the question you ask is, okay, for a whole month, you will keep these palliatives, the people will be hungry.
I don't buy that.
After Nigerians have protested that the Minister of Humanitarian Disaster and Social Development, Shadia Umar Farouk, I think that's her name. Yeah, she had been accused of not distributing palliatives. People had said they were not seeing the palliatives. Only to find these palliatives sitting in warehouses from Jos to Ilorin to Benin.
Part of the country.
So the people, the argument is that, okay, they freed what belongs to them. And we have been told not to call them hoodlums, not to call them looters. Okay, that's the political side of it. But how about the private persons, the people on Admiralty Way, whose properties were attacked, whose supermarkets were attacked, the people in Edo, the people in Adeniro Ogunsanya, Bode Thomas, innocent people, people who borrowed money, people at Sekumo, at Jakonde in Lagos, whose businesses were attacked, their things were carted away, Valumat in Calabar and in other parts of the country. Now, that side of it just tells you that we're dealing with anarchy, with chaos, with implications of poverty. If you don't take care of your people, the other day on this program, I asked a question about collective psychogenic crisis. The whole country has gone mad. Yeah. There is a mental health crisis that is collective and national.
You can say that again.
And that is why governance is required, leadership is required. And when our leaders tell stories, they talk about fake news. Okay, will anybody say the looting of warehouses is fake news? Will anybody say the attack on private persons' assets is fake news? Now, who is going to provide restitution for those private persons? Innocent persons for the most part. You know, well, you can say the politicians, you don't care about them. But how about private persons who have lost so much?
It's completely unacceptable.
And Dr. Abati, plus what you said, I want to top this by saying a lot of people are becoming psychogenic, plus the proliferation of the use of drugs among young people.
Well,
Indian hemp.
Proof on that, you know.
Indian hemp, Dr. Abati, go to the streets. Indian hemp, codeine, tramadol.
So they weren't in their right senses when they were doing all these.
You seem to know all the.
A lot of them are on
all the
drugs.
assets.
Tundo, we have a drug problem in this country nobody's addressing. It is shocking.
Yeah, but something is wrong mentally with our country.
We have a big drug problem in this country. That's all. We'll take on news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, I have the duo of Rotus and Adeso Amaro to give us updates on Africa and COVID-19. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. Rotus Adiri, how are you? Good morning. Great to talk to you, Rotus. Hello, Rotus.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor, and good morning, Tundu. So, look, we begin, of course, with a notice from the Lagos State government with respect to the curfew and the restriction of movements. There was a tweet that was sent out, which is going to, of course, affect commuters, affect businesses, and regulate pretty much everyone's movement. So, curfew update. The curfew in Lagos State has been reviewed. Restriction time is now 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., meaning that from after 6 a.m. up until 7:59, folks can move around. That was a little bit confusing for a few people. Lagosians are enjoined to plan their journey times as they go about their lawful businesses. All public and private schools remain shut until further notice. So the disruptions to education, I have to say, have continued all through 2020, and it's been tough for those who do not have access to online facilities to be able to continue their education. Just to set the scene here, we're in a rebuilding stage, and we're focusing on the hits that banks have taken in the country due to the violence that has spilled over from what occurred at the Lekki toll gate. We're looking at, we did some investigations here, and we estimated what was, based on our investigations and the banks that we spoke to, what kind of damage they faced. So we look here, First Bank, for instance, it's estimated that about 10 of their locations were affected. 3 in Aba, 1 in Umahia, which of course is in an area, local government area in Abia State. Enugu had one area which was damaged, one branch that was damaged. Ikot Ekwene, which is in local government area in Akwa Ibom, one branch that was affected. Lagos, 4 of them. Union Bank, our estimates are we had about 10 branches that were affected. We still haven't quite sorted out the locations, but based on the preliminary investigations we did, about 10 of them were affected. GTB, 9. We haven't got listed all 9, but we all know, of course, the Admiralty branch that was severely burned. Going to be there later on today to take a look at the repairs that are going on, because some of the banks have actually started repairs on some of these branches. Access Bank also suffered some damage, about 8 estimated, 5 in Lagos, 1 in Aba, 1 Calabar, 1 Uyo. We move on to more branches, more banks across the country. Stanbic IBTC, an estimate of 2 of them in Lagos that were damaged. Heritage Bank, 1 of them in Lagos. Eco Bank, 1 estimated branch that suffered damage in Benin. And then Polaris Bank, which was really damaged. I think we have video of that in Lagos State. So, of course, we move on now. There's some videos that we took that look. This is the entrance to the Admiralty going into Lekki Phase 1. Zenith Bank donated this watchtower. You can see the damage that the building suffered. Also, further in the Zenith Bank, while I was still with Zenith Bank, their ATM, they've already actually started repairs. If we look at the ATM, so this is, remember the drone footage we had? There was the drone footage we had. We saw men who were at this location that were working on trying to rebuild this. So they've already boarded up this particular area. They've boarded up the ATM. This was an ATM. They said about 4 or 5 of them that were there that suffered heavy damage in the aftermath of the violence. So they've boarded it up, and it looks like repairs are going to begin. Stanbic IBTC, this was one of their ATMs also on Admiralty that suffered some serious damage. And remember, these monitors, they're not manufactured here in Nigeria, right? So a number of them are imported. So as we zoom in closer here, you will see the extent to which the glass was shattered and the ATMs were completely, you can see the big hole inside the ATMs there. That's at the Stanbic IBTC. In fact, one of their branches was also suffered damage as well, in addition to this ATM. This is an off-site ATM. Who else? Access Bank. This is repairs. You can see repairs already beginning at the Access Bank. This is all on Admiralty, by the way, just to again, for our viewers. This is all on Admiralty Way in Lekki Phase 1. You can see they've already set up scaffolding. You can see the glass and the amount of damage that the Access Bank location suffered on Admiralty. You can see the ATMs. You can see all the the shattered glass on the floor. The ATMs also as well were severely damaged, but work has begun. And the reason why work has begun so quickly is that in fact, I know GTB, Access, Union Bank, Zenith, all the banks that have begun their repairs. These are critical locations. Okay, this is GTB now. You can see, again, this was the drone footage captured this from above, but this is zooming in now. You can see the amount of damage from the fire on the right-hand side of the building, the extent to which the flames engulfed the side of the building. Again, this is still a GTB branch on Admiralty. They've already started repairs. They already got repairmen who are already on site that have started repairing some of the damage. There was extensive damage, not just on the side of the building. I think we've got more footage of the gentlemen, the folks that are there now, who are actually now working to restore the damage at that GTB location. So it's pretty widespread when you think about the amount of damage that's there. Again, we're going to be there later on today, taking stock of what's occurred. But there are critical branches that are, for these banks, they have to start repairs very quickly, because this part of Admiralty Way is not only a commercial area, it's also a residential area. So there's bars, there's restaurants, there's schools, there's all these people need money. So now when you think about it, with this amount of damage that's been done to ATMs, where are people now going to get access to cash? I think that the POS operators, the individuals who give cashback services where you pay a fee and they take your card and then give you cash back, they are probably the ones, I've seen them popping up here and there. They will be the ones to benefit from this lack of access to cash for a lot of people in that area. And again, if you look at that, the estimates that we have, this is not just in Lagos, this is across different parts of the country. But the banks have to quickly begin rebuilding. They have to quickly begin damage repair, because these are such critical branches to their operation. So it's something we'll be looking at through today, and that's what's been dominating coverage now, is how businesses are going to respond to this. It's not just banks. We're going to be looking at SMEs later on this week and a number of other industries as well.
Excellent focus, but this is just an indication of how the crisis that Nigeria faces has affected different economics, different parts of the economy. Previously, we talked about private assets being attacked. Now you are focusing on the banking sector. The examples you have shown will probably be the civilized ones. In some other parts of Lagos, far away from Lekki, Admiralty Way, look, those ATM machines were uprooted. They were taken out. And the question is, what do we learn from that? What does this tell us? Are we dealing with poverty, that assumed a ferocious, a furious dimension and pushed the people to another level? Because definitely anybody who uproots an ATM machine is looking for money. Second, are there precautions that the banks can take beyond just the repairs that you have shown? What kind of precautions can they take to protect their ATM machines? Because there's no guarantee that another day those ATM machines will not be targeted. Third, what can we measure the extent of the damage? Has any bank come forward to say, well, from the attack on our machines, some banks were even opened up and violated? What is the measurement of the extent of the damage? And four, in any case, is this a big deal for the banks? The banks seem to have been the only ones doing well from what we have seen with National Bureau of Statistics reports, and also in terms of performance in the stock market. And in any case, the banks will be insured. These are some of the questions I would like you to address.
Great questions, Doctor. So, as far as security, in fact, when we were out there yesterday taking some of this footage, there was actually heavy military presence at the front of the entrance to Admiralty. So, that, of course, is coming from the states, though. So the state has deployed key military points at different parts of the state. So that's serving as security for now, but I think that's in line with the curfew, as you saw the tweet from Lagos State government with the restrictions for the curfew. So we haven't seen any particular banks beef up security for now. The banks are focused right now on repairing their branches so that customers can return. And remember, this is another key thing. Before this even happened, due to the pandemic, the banks were already rotating operations between their branches. So even here on Awolowo Road, one of the banks that has more than one location on here where we are, they were rotating branches already, so not all branches were operational. Now you layer the violence, the effects of the violence on existing branches. That now puts pressure on the branches they were already rotating. So security right now is coming from federal government on the military and then police from the police as well. We haven't seen any individual branches now beef up security. I think what they want to do first is to fix the branches, repair them, and then they now talk about security. As far as damage, in our investigations, we haven't got any estimates yet. The banks will be submitting their insurance claims to the insurance companies. We try to get to talk to some of the insurance. Some of the insurance, they cover the ATMs, they cover the physical branches, they cover different parts. So we've been told that all the damage you're seeing here, they will submit their claims to them. We won't see this until Q4. We're in the fourth quarter of the year. So until early next year when the banks submit their financials. Right now we're getting Q3 financials from the different institutions. But until early next year, we won't actually see the extent to the damage. It's going to affect their financials. I think they have to dip into their retained earnings in order to try to get this going, and then they're now hopefully reimbursed by the insurance policies that they have. So we also in our investigation, we talked to some insurance companies. They said that, well, look, as of right now, the banks have to submit the claims to them. So all this damage repair you're seeing, they take the estimates of that, put all that into context, send it over to the insurance. So it will be later on that we get estimates. But look, I mean, even Rufai yourself, Dr. Tundu, you mused on this last week when we were looking at damage. It's going to be in the billions. I mean, when you put total everything up, I can't really segment for banks right now, but for the kind of damage that we've seen, it's going to be quite heavy. What happens going forward, Doctor, as you've said? Good question. Do you beef up your security? When we talk about high interest rates in Nigeria, these are the kind of things that feed into the double-digit interest rates you see when you try to get a loan from a bank. Cost of doing business, the generators, maintenance of branches. Now you see security and risk. Whatever beefing up they do, it's going to filter down to you and I, the end users, at the end of the day.
You'll recall that right at the beginning of this pandemic, there was a huge storm about banks using that opportunity to lay off staff. Those concerns were assuaged to a certain degree. Are we looking at that again? Has that scenario rearisen at this point? Right.
Okay, great question, Tundu. The central bank, of course, has been very clear on them getting approval before any layoffs take place. So the central bank has done its best to protect the employees of these banks and to try to stem any layoffs. But it's a great question because that was before this violence. We've seen the estimates across the country. It's going to come at a cost. It's going to put pressure on the branches that have been damaged, which are already, I mean, if I can use the term, being rationed as far as operations are concerned. So that does come up again. But I believe that the central bank will just pretty much repeat what it did in the wake of the pandemic. It's saying, hey, look, banks, just, take it easy on layoffs at this time. Probably not. They will need to get approval, essentially. Approval will need to be get. So they will try to stem the tide. But it's a valid question in that can rear its head again, because all these damages, the costs pile up, and these are costs that are already on top of their balance sheets and their income statements. Operations are reduced, less people going out. So it's something that has to be definitely looked at again and could come up again.
Quickly, let me piggyback on the question raised by Tundu. Do you see any connection between the attack on the banks and what happened when the feminist coalition was trying to raise funds, and they were stopped by the banks, and the feminist coalition had to look for bitcoins? Could there be a connection in terms of the anger against the banks?
I doubt. Good question, Doctor, but I doubt. I mean, we already saw before that the spike in Bitcoin use. before the violence occurred, we are here on the Global Business Report, even here on the morning show, we had that summary, that Bitcoin summary, where you saw spikes in South Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria. That was, of course, due to the FX liquidity issues that were already apparent in the country. Traders here remember the central bank, Nigeria. China, there was the Naira Yuan swap where traders here could get access to Yuan for them to bring in products from China, which they could now sell here. So Nigeria was already trying to address that issue. The FX liquidity issues now forced some traders to deal in Bitcoin to pay suppliers overseas to bring their products here. So that was already up there. So the Feminist Coalition, when that happened with them and their Flutterwave account, I believe it was, when they lost access to that, they just moved to Bitcoin, and that was just a continuing trend. I kind of doubt if there'll be a connection between that and the destruction we've seen. As you already alluded to, people trying to uproot ATMs, I think that's just with poverty, anger, frustration, just trying to get access to funds. So I wouldn't draw a line between the two.
Very spot on, Roses, because there was sort of like an ecosystem, you know, for cryptocurrencies generally in the country before now, and they also used other means. And just for the sake of knowledge, I think Zimbabwe has about one of the biggest cryptocurrencies ecosystem, because we know what have happened to their currency over the years in Zimbabwe. So that definitely just latches on what is happening. But thank you so much for your insight, Rotus. Really, really appreciate you for that. We'll get some updates on COVID-19 pandemic. Adeso Amoro. Okay, we'll go for a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk to Adeso about what is happening based on COVID-19 pandemic. We'll be right back. All right, for more updates on COVID-19, Adeso Amara joins us. Adeso, what is happening? We seem to be having a curfew too in Europe. There's curfew everywhere in the world. COVID-19 curfew, riots curfew. What's happening?
Indeed, Rufai, good morning. Good morning, Dr. Bati, and good morning, Tundu. Europe is seeing the nightmare we witnessed at the beginning of the pandemic. Over 9 million people have now contracted the coronavirus on the continent. So a lot of attention, a lot of measures, including lockdowns, restrictions, but a bit more targeted, unlike the blanket ones we saw. But Rufai, as it is the tradition, let's quickly take a look at the global numbers this morning. As the coronavirus continues to spread across the world, over 43 million people have now been infected, and in excess of 1 million deaths. Let us also say that several millions have recovered from this virus. The virus is surging in many regions, and some countries that had apparent success in suppressing it in initial outbreaks are now having second wave, third wave surges or spikes. Away from that, now, as those numbers continue to soar, the head of the World Health Organization is for the umpteenth time calling for global solidarity in the rollout of any future corona vaccine that we have. Video address at the opening of a 3-day World Health Summit in Berlin, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus said that the only way to recover from the pandemic was together. and by making sure poorer countries had fair access to a vaccine. Now, Dr. Tedros believes that the effective way to control the virus when a vaccine is eventually available is to vaccinate, listen to this, some people in all countries rather than all people in some countries. And that makes a lot of sense. He says vaccine nationalism will only prolong the pandemic and will never shorten it. Now, scientists around the world are racing to develop a vaccine like we've never seen before. But the European Union, the US, Britain, Japan, and a slew of other countries have placed large orders with these companies involved in developing the most promising vaccines. And concerns are growing that countries with smaller wallets, smaller pockets could be left out, at the back of the queue. You recall that the WHO launched an international scheme known as the COVAX to help ensure that everybody gets equitable access to jabs. But the US, you would recall also that the Trump administration refused to join the international effort of COVAX, but instead is pursuing its own unilateral vaccine program called Operation Warp Speed. I'm still talking about vaccines. Let's go to Israel. This sounds promising. Israel will begin its first clinical trials of vaccine next month. Authorities revealed this yesterday. The first clinical trials it's called the BriLife vaccine, will begin on November 1. And according to the spokesperson for the Defense Ministry, he said that the necessary approvals have been given and the trials will be conducted over several months. Now, the first stage will conduct a preliminary safety trials on 80 healthy volunteers between the ages of 18 and 55. That number is expected to grow in the second phase to 960 volunteers, and in the third stage it will be broader to examine vaccine effectiveness with up to 30,000 volunteers. Israel is grappling with a second wave of the infections. COVID has killed 2,317 people in the Jewish state since the start of the outbreak there, and 300,000 people have been infected according to official figures. Let's go to the US. The coronavirus doesn't seem to have left the White House. The chief of staff to Vice President Mike Pence and 4 others in the vice president's inner circles have tested positive. And despite this, the vice president continues his aggressive campaign 8 days to the US elections. And according to the CDC protocols, the vice president should actually be quarantined and he should be wearing face masks. But we're not seeing a lot of that from the vice president. And this is doubly awkward because the vice president leads the coronavirus task force for the Trump administration. So it's a question of, are you leading by example in the US? And that's it, guys.
Obviously, you asked a question, and this question sounds sort of very rhetorical to me anyway, because obviously he's not leading by example. Mike Pence has never shown leadership. Donald Trump either has never shown leadership since all of this started. And it's just 8 days to the elections. I just pray he doesn't come down with this. Concerning the lockdown across Europe, it got bigger over the weekend. But there are some group of scientists, and they're talking about something called the Great Barrington Plan, which a lot of people have rebuffed. What they're saying invariably is, let's use herd mentality to fight this. Let's have, special care for people that are vulnerable in society and let other people move around their daily duties. But the consensus across the science world is we're fighting it back. If you go to South America, Colombia became another country with over 1 million cases. So most countries now are beginning to hit the 1 million target. And this throws a big question that, how are they getting those numbers on time? Is it that they're having fresh infections, or a lot of people are getting reinfected that we do not know? This is another concern I want us to talk about. That's still going on in England. That's still going on in most parts of France. But I want you to prevail on that concern. Is it that these are reinfections or people are getting fresh infections?
Well, before you come in, Adesua, first, in the United States, I think that the Vice President, Mike Pence, is grossly negligent. He's showing a very bad example. He was tested on Sunday, and we were told that he tested negative. But, the scientists have said, even when you are tested within a short space of time, then it doesn't mean that you are COVID-19 free. And the person who made that point is a scientist called Dr. Ali Nouri. So what Vice President Mike Pence is doing is that he's putting the lives of people who will come close to him into jeopardy because he could still spread the virus. But his spokesperson and also Meadows, the chief of staff of the White House, insist that he's an essential worker. Now, and they are quoting the Center for Disease Control and saying that the Center for Disease Control says if you are an essential worker, then of course you can go about your essential duties. I don't know how he's an essential duty worker. What we're saying is the desperation on the part of the Trump-Pence campaign to see how they can close the gap, the yawning gap that will make them lose the election on November 3. So it looks like an African situation whereby our leaders say, oh, do as we tell you, but don't do as we do. And I think it's very unfortunate that the country with the highest prevalence of COVID-19 is a place where leadership is so short. Because what Mike Pence is doing, essentially, is that he's following the example of his boss, President Donald Trump, whose response also to COVID-19 has been thoroughly cavalier throughout the year. As for Spain, yes, in Spain, there is a very desperate situation. At the time in Europe, Spain in the Northern Hemisphere had the highest numbers. Now, the restrictions that they are trying to impose is consistent with what is going on across the entire Northern Hemisphere, whether it's in Italy, or it's in Spain, or it's in France, or it's in the UK, Belgium, Poland, Greece, everywhere. And in Spain in particular, over the weekend, the numbers rose from about 45,000 cases on Saturday to 52,000 cases by Sunday morning. And so these restrictions need to be imposed, as it were. Now, as for vaccine nationalism, I think that the Director General of the WHO is absolutely right. He has always been talking about global solidarity. And we have in place what they call the COVAX Alliance. That COVAX Alliance is supposed to ensure equity, to make sure that even poor countries have access to the vaccine. And that's the whole point that Dr. Ghebreyesus was making at the 3-day World Health Summit that took place over the weekend in Berlin. And I think it is important that every country looks out for the other country. Because, you know, of course, take a country like Nigeria or other countries in Africa. We have signed up, along with 158 other countries, to that COVAX Alliance. I think that the interest of the poor, the underprivileged, the low and middle income countries also needs to be protected. So in that regard, preaching about global solidarity as opposed to vaccine nationalism, I think is very important. In Israel, now, my big takeaway in Israel is that you will see that this vaccine trial, 3-state trial that has now been initiated, is a combination of efforts on the part of the Institute for Biological Research, the Ministry of Defense, and the Ministry of Health. And I would like to stress the point about the Ministry of Defense. In other countries, as we have also seen in Russia, the military, they help to move society forward. They are part of progressive causes in society. I would like to see someday when the Nigerian military is part of finding a solution to the problems that confront the people in real time. But here in Nigeria, as we see in Russia, as we see in Israel, with the defense ministry helping the people, the defense ministry in Nigeria is being accused of turning the guns on the people who purchased those guns and who made it possible for an institution like the military to exist.
Right. In that regard, Israel is different from Nigeria, but like Nigeria, Israel has had weeks now of anti-Netanyahu protests about the botched COVID response, about corruption and bad governance. So maybe this might help assuage some of those feelings and people might go back home, because all they're doing, apparently, well, if Israel's press is to be believed, is spreading the virus. These are the major cities, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Haifa. People have come out in their thousands over the past 2 weeks or so. So let's see if this, gives them any satisfaction. With regards to Mike Pence, it has to be stressed that he is actually the head of America's COVID-19 task force, not Donald Trump. So it goes to show what a disaster that whole response has been. He has not taken his leadership seriously. He seems to have bowed to the dictates of his principal, as Dr. Abati said, which he really ought not to have done, because there's a reason why he was vice president. We all have to know, and this is something that we see here in Nigeria as well, the vice president or deputy on a ticket is not just an appendage. They're there to bring value. They're there to contribute positively. And Mike Pence has utterly failed in that regard.
Right. This was the question I asked earlier on. I just want to know your take on it. Are these new infections or these are repeat infections?
Rufai, a lot of things we are dealing with here. There's been negligence, there's been pandemic fatigue, but there's also a path that we have forgotten. So a lot of countries are now imposing lockdowns, state of emergency, restrictions, but there's a first part to breaking the chain of transmission, which is track and trace, and then test. So what scientists are saying is that a lot of countries are sort of abandoning that part of the response to the pandemic, where you ought to track, you trace, and then test. So what we are saying is those are not being done. The infections, as you know, the incubation period, so these numbers are rising because we have failed to track, trace, and test. We're just imposing lockdowns. I think that's what we are majorly saying. There are not necessarily new infections in some places. In some places we're seeing new infections, but in other places it's just infections that have missed, the horse has bolted, and we're just picking them up now because we did not track, we did not trace, and we're not testing enough.
Very well said, Aziz Amaro. I really appreciate you for that. It's time for a short break on the morning show. When we return, we'll have Arise News analyst Emmanuel Ofeni join us to review top stories in today's newspaper daily. Just stay with us.
Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Ofeni. Malabite!
Good morning, Ruben, my friend. Good morning, Rufai. Victoria Tundu MKO Aviola, good morning.
Yeah, she has been standing in.
You must have been missing that.
Very loyal, Victoria.
We missed you.
Well, let's start the review with this day, Nigeria's newspaper of records. The lead story, again, Buhari pleads for peace, assures victim of EndSARS protest of justice. Warns looting will erode confidence of foreign investors. Coordinated attacks targeted at weakening Southwest economy, says governors. Ministers, Gbajabiamila, Lagos needs 1 trillion naira to rebuild damaged infrastructure. Now, if you look at the back page of this day, some unusual intervention on the back page of this day. Now, the first story there, Justin Whereby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, a time for heroes. Of course, weighing in the situation in Nigeria. And the first statement he reads, the deliberate shooting of unarmed protesters in Lagos and other parts of Nigeria last week was an outrage. That's the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Weber. but below his own piece is that of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Yes, the Asiwaju of Lagos, and he said he is still the Jagaban, putting his own side of the story there for everybody to see. Somehow striking the right notes, he seemed to know his traducers, and he wants us to make a distinction between what the genuine protesters wanted, and they should not be blamed for this destruction. The peaceful protesters, Tinubu is saying, should not be blamed for this. Of course, he's talking about the anomaly of those who are paid to protect the people, brutalizing them. I'm sure he's trying to at least pacify the atmosphere, striking the right notes, but whether he has done so adequately is another matter altogether, because it's like he's aware. Some people are bent on roping him in to the present situation in the country, and he says, I don't see how this will benefit me if people are saying I'm behind some of what has just happened. How is this going to benefit me? He's asking. But let us look at what other newspapers are reporting. The Daily Sun newspaper, military arrests 123 for looting public property. This Daily Sun newspaper of Nigeria. The Nigerian Tribune, Lagos attacks meant to weaken Southwest economy. That's the governors of the Southwest who met in Lagos yesterday making that statement. Wonder at ease of arson despite proximity of security agencies in affected areas. Disregard threat of violence, Akeredolu tells Igbo. Those killed must get justice, Bajabia Miller. Now, the Punch newspaper, police go after looters. 483 arrested in Lagos, Plateau, Anambra, others. We will fish out looters. Lagos, Osun, Akwa Ibom Police Command vow. 14 killed during looting in Kogi, Adamawa, Taraba, palliative warehouses. Palliative in warehouses, evidence Buhari is not our problem. The daughter of the president defending her father, and this time she seemed to have some good reasons to defend her father. Now, the Daily Trust newspaper, federal government never asked governors to wait for approval. Officials, that's in connection with palliative distribution. They hoarded relief materials. My father vindicated Buhari's daughter. We handed over items to states since COVID, that's the coalition against COVID-19. President condemns looting as plunder continues. Of course, there is some graphics there about the looting of warehouses that took place across the country. Lagos, Kwara, Ondo, Osun, Abuja, FCT, Anambra, Cross River, Edo, Kaduna, Plateau, Taraba, Abuja, yes, and Adamawa, and Osun. All these places, warehouses, supposedly housing COVID-19 palliatives, were attacked by the people who felt these items belong to them. Looting, burning, violence, no, you may say. Now, the Daily Independence, killed protesters at Lekki will get justice, Buhari assures. Now, this statement, Ruben, you are an alumnus of Aso Villa. Why was this statement not included in the president's speech? Now, this statement signed by Garba Shehu saying EndSARS protests, killed protesters will get justice, Buhari assures. I'm sure if that was part of the president's speech, many Nigerians will not be criticizing the speech as empty. Now, the foreign newspapers, we just look at the Guardian of UK. Johnson facing revolt as Tories demand U-turn on school meals. Of course, there is anger among MPs over what they consider as a political disaster of rejecting the campaign, the plea by football star Rashford, who is urging the government to feed children at home during holidays. But Boris Johnson is having none of that. Of course, that is turning many members of his party against him. Labour ready to pounce, with Labour leader Keir Starmer pledging to force a fresh Commons vote before Christmas if Boris Johnson does not change his mind. Now, the Washington Post in the US, White House is again afflicted with coronavirus. 5 in Pence orbit have virus. Yes, 5 aides, advisors of Mike Pence, the vice president, afflicted by coronavirus, yet the vice president has refused to isolate. Self-isolate, is hopping around campaigning like his boss, Donald Trump. Ruben, I took exception to the fact you were trying to say Donald Trump is behaving like African leaders. No! African leaders are even better. President Donald Trump is behaving like Trump, not like African leaders.
He's like an African potentate. The truth is painful, but we have to say he's like Mobutu Sese Seko.
Oh my God!
In many ways, think about it. Can you see it? Can you see him with like a leopard?
Yeah, like a leopard
hat? You can see it. You can visualize it. But I just want to say that there were some Tories, starting with your story from The Guardian, there were some Tories that did vote with Labour, but those who didn't, this is the power of the people, those who didn't have heard from their constituents, and their constituents have attacked them for such a callous stance. It's such a drop in the ocean compared to the entire budget. This could have been provided for vulnerable children in the UK. So this is the power of the people. Representatives, senators in Nigeria, they should hear from their constituents on issues like this, and we should dictate to them how to vote. So important. This is a U-turn on their part.
And a big deal for this, because let's go back to how all of this started. I'm talking about the Rashford story. Young footballer said, it was difficult for me to eat when I was a child, no school meals. And the first thing he does, he writes a letter to the MPs and say, please ensure you provide this. And at some point they did all their politics, they reneged on it, but he never stopped. And everybody fell on the bandwagon. And today, companies, all sorts of people in the UK are putting out food out there for people to be able to eat. It shows the capacity and the power of just one man. And I quickly want to link that to what you saw on the front page of The Guardian, to Lewis Hamilton breaking that record, Michael Schumacher's record, having 92 wins. Before that race, he had a #EndSARS shirt on. You can see him there with Black Lives Matter too. So that's to show you what these great people are doing. But concerning Trump, I am not surprised really. And I want to toe the line of Tundu, seeing that hat on him. Trump looks like a guy to me that he would not just want you to call him Mobutu Sese Seko. He'll want you to call him Mobutu Sese Seko Kukungenu Wazabanga. That's the kind of person Trump's look like to me. And you can see how deplorable his leadership has been in all of this. And it's a time for all Americans to wake up and make him really pay for all he has done to their country. And real quick,
democracy. So let's leave Africa out of his problem.
I'm coming back to Nigeria. 2 great back page insights. I'll talk a little bit about Justin Welby. Justin Welby is not just, the Archbishop of Canterbury. Justin Welby worked in ELF at a point. They had a lot of dealing with West Africa, so he knows the territory also well. Justin Welby, too, is also a member of the House of Lords. He's got a peerage because he's the Archbishop of Canterbury Cathedral. So when he says that and he shows his concerns concerning Nigeria, these are things we should listen to very critically. I mean, look at the mammoth destruction everywhere. We can't afford for this to continue. The police are saying, to repair barracks and everything, damage in Lagos alone, 10 billion naira. What if you had added that money to the salaries of police officers that the campaign was all about in the first place? A lot of them will get a pay raise, really. So that shows you that this has gone out of hand. We must do everything possible to ensure that peace is restored, and we need to start growing our very fragile economy. Before COVID-19, the economy was in shambles. It was just, trying to pick up from many factors that had held it down. COVID-19 came, put the economy at a very, precarious situation. Now with all of this, it's a setback and we need to build our economies. And that's why you see the revolt of the street. That's why you see the revolt as regards the palliative that would have cushioned the sufferings of a lot of people. Now the federal government is coming out openly to say that we didn't say you need to get permission for us. You should have shared this palliative. So it speaks volumes. Everybody all came out here and talked against Mem Farouk, the minister, saying she didn't do anything. But it was obvious that these were sent around and people didn't just share it. That's not to justify the looting, but when you look at it, to a large extent, it hurts. Take, for instance, the person that was saying I was waiting for my birthday before I share it. Was this supposed to be your birthday gift?
Nothing to do with
Was this supposed to be your birthday gift?
I would like to come here, and I would like to start with Trump. Trump, President of the United States, is not very popular around here. I don't think anybody here is fan, even if we don't have a vote in the matter. But it's important to also note, curiously, something happened over the weekend. A church in Onitsha, a church led by a certain gentleman called Daddy Ezekiah, went onto the streets campaigning for Donald Trump, saying Donald Trump 4+4. Which is a Nigerian slogan. And I was very curious how the re-election of President Donald Trump in the United States is important to the people of Onitsha or the congregation of Daddy Ezekiah. They went onto the streets and they were campaigning that, Donald Trump must get another 4 years. So when we say that he seems to be an African president, there is a contest for that, As for Daddy Ezekiah and his campaigners, I'm not too sure any one of them has a voting card or any opportunity to vote or have a say in the American election. Now, let's go to the back page of this day, which is very interesting. Justin Welby, Archbishop of Canterbury, has an interesting article, A Time for Heroes. And he made a number of very cogent points. He's saying that the heroes that will save Nigeria are Nigerians. And that Nigeria does not need to look up to outsiders because there is enough heroism in the country. And he talked about Nigerians working to save their own country. And the best way to do that is to be progressive, to focus on first principles. And I think that these are not arguments that anybody can controvert. If I may quote him, in one instance, he says, the heroic leader is like the good shepherd. Do we have a good shepherd in Nigeria? Do we have good shepherds in Nigeria? And he says the heroic leader sees the long-term vision and always aims for it. Do we have long-term vision, or we are still working on it, Agenda 2050? And he says Nigeria should seize the moment because the rest of the world is watching. And this is a country that has heroes. But unfortunately, it seems to me that, yes, there's no lack of heroism in Nigeria, but there is a lack of patriotism. We're a country in search of patriots, in search of citizens. In 1978, Professor John Pepe Clark Bekederemo, who died recently, delivered his inaugural lecture at the University of Lagos. He titled it, The Hero as Villain. The heroes we have in Nigeria, unfortunately, are villains. And that is why we have the tragic dimension of, community togetherness that we have witnessed in recent times. I hope that our heroes will become patriots and citizens. And that's the only way the country can move forward. So, Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, has a point that speaks to us. Now, the other article on the back page is the article by Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in which he talks about fundamental lesson in democratic governance. Two parts to that article. At one level, he tries to defend himself, the same manner in which he did so when he visited the governor of Lagos State over the weekend. And he made the point that there is no way that he could have ordered soldiers to come and attack young people in Lagos at the Lekki Toll Gate Plaza. And in the first place, he does not have any interest in that Lekki Toll Gate Plaza. And that again, why will he order soldiers to go and attack people at the Toll Gate Plaza when his own business interests in which he has investment, the Nation and the TVC, TV Continental, he did not make any effort to protect them or send their soldiers to the place. So his main argument at the personal level is that, one, this is a case of a political victimization by those who oppose him. He also says that he's being targeted by persons who may not like his politics. First, he was accused of being the person who sponsored the protest. Second, he says he was accused of now sending soldiers, and that clearly is contradictory. And then, of course, he used a better part of the essay to talk about progressive politics, which, in his view, he has always defended from the June 12 struggle, at the point at which he came into public reckoning, and how he has remained consistent in terms of promoting progressive politics. Then, of course, he talks about his commitment to Lagos as a state and how he has helped to contribute to the development of Lagos State. You will recall, of course, that, in my view, the purpose of that essay is to say, yes, Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been the target. He has been the scapegoat. In fact, he used that word, scapegoat, that he has been scapegoated. But that is not the scapegoat. He is committed to the progress of Lagos. He is committed to democracy. And he condemned, in particular, the use of excessive force against innocent citizens who were just protesting, who were expressing their views. And he said that the use of excessive force against innocent protesters is unacceptable because it's a constitutional right to protest. Now, what is the politics of it? We have seen Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the last 2-3 days coming out to speak up for himself. After it was said that he had taken the Nadeko route a second time to escape, he said no, he did not escape anywhere. He's the Asiwaju of Lagos, he's the Jagaban of Nigerian politics, and that even his son, Sheyi Tinubu, did not go anywhere. I think from the point of view of strategy, he has done well to explain himself, and it is good that he's not arrogant about it. He understands the fact that being at the center of the storm, he owes the people of Nigeria and the people of Lagos an explanation. The only caveat here is that, yes, it's not enough to go and visit the governor and grant interviews to Arise News and other channels or write an essay on the back page of This Day. We hope that the Asiwaju, the Jagaban, the former governor, the senator, we also try to learn a few lessons from what has happened. Why was he targeted? Why is his name being thrown up? After all, in a part of Lagos, Ijora Kingdom, the Lufemiloye of Ijora Kingdom, some youths tried to attack his house, but the youths within the community and the elders within the community, they protected his palace. Ilufemiloye has released a video now of Ijora Kingdom where he went out and he was thanking members of the community. And this was the same point that was made by Erelu of Lagos on this same program on Saturday, when she said that, look, the leaders of Lagos must also engage in soul searching. How are they leading the people? What example are they showing? That, for me, is a big takeaway and a big, footnote to the essay that you referred to by Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu on the back page of This Day today.
Okay.
Yeah, but we need to see more humility. You were saying he was humble about it, but when I saw that video, I am the Jagaban, there wasn't air of humility. I thought with what has just happened, his first appearance should be a sober one. But personally, I did not see that, Ruben. I did not see that. Maybe in this write-up...
in the essay.
Yes, in this essay, there seemed to be some of that, but his first appearance on TV, I am the Jagaban, as if no matter what happens, I am doing what I have to do. I think that first appearance was bad PR.
You know what they say, Mr. Feni, that a picture is worth 1,000 words. An essay is just words, and you can make a lot of inferences from what you saw on television there. But I think what is cogent here is how we can build a peace, how we can build those businesses back, and how I don't know. I know that there's a certain bank this morning that has started giving 50 billion interest-free loans, to businesses. How we can ensure that a couple of these businesses that might have lost things, small businesses, get loans to get them back on there, because that's the engine room of any economy in the world. Small businesses, they're the greatest employer of labor, and a lot of them have been touched. Somebody called me over the weekend, was saying, I didn't even know the bank, kept on shouting, I just collected money from Lapo, and now the money is gone. What can I do? And the person was crying, wailing on the phone. So businesses like that too should be helped.
Devastating, which is why I don't understand, as you were saying, Mr. Fene, what the point of mentioning one's traditional titles are at a time like this, and that ill-timed little cackle. What was that laughter in aid of?
But
I don't understand it.
I think we should deal with the big issues. The fact that the Asiwaju was trying to explain his personal circumstances, and he also made effort to defend the right of the people to protest. He also made efforts also to defend the federal government. You can't disagree with that, because he was saying that the federal government has been responsive in terms of how it handled the matter. He was also saying that the Lagos State governor has done very well. Now, people can disagree at that level. But, politicians, they like to use every opportunity to project themselves. Are we arguing that it's not the Asiwaju of Lagos? Are we arguing that it's not the Jagaban of Bogu? So if in a moment of, excitement, a man says, this is who I am. But don't forget, from the point of view of strategy, a man had been scapegoated, attacks had been made on his businesses and investments. Coming out, writing an essay, is a way of saying, what is that phrase by Baba Obasanjo?
Ade Kankpe.
Ade Kankpe. So I guess Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu was just saying, Ade Kankpe, no shaking.
There is time to say Ade Kankpe, and there is time not to say it, clearly. That couldn't have been the time to say Ade Kankpe. That's what the point I'm making. Okay. And I think some lessons should be learned from there. A lot have happened, and I must not fail to sympathize with our colleagues who were attacked when TVC and the Nation newspaper and other media organizations relating close to the government, owned by government of Lagos State, were attacked because they could have lost their lives. But thank God they all escaped with their lives, because when you see the video of the mob approaching those media organizations, fire, escalating violence, and I was really concerned about the lives of our colleagues. But thankfully, they all came out unscathed with their lives. Properties destroyed, some had their personal cars burnt, but when you are alive, you can acquire more cars, you can be compensated. And I think we should just pay attention to that. We have colleagues who have also been affected by this wanton destruction that we saw across Lagos and other parts of the country. But one thing I think we should not fail to also mention, those who died. The Punch newspaper, if we can just roll back the Punch newspaper, there's a story there I think we can just look at. Friends prevented soldiers from going away with my son's body in Lekki. The story of a grieving mother. Because some have been asking, show us evidence, show us evidence. But this story, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, the story of a grieving mother who lost her son. And according to her, but for the friends of this son who pulled the body away, soldiers will have made away with the body. That story is on the front page of the Punch. So when President Buhari said, according to Garba Shehu, that killers of persons, peaceful protesters at Lekki toll gate will be brought to justice, I hope the government will pursue that very well. Because if it does not happen today, someday another administration will get to the roots of that matter. If persons died and they were taken away. going by this story?
We will be leaving very soon, but I should reiterate this. The investigative panel for, what happened in Lekki starts today at the Lagos Arbitration Court in Lekki area of Lagos. So people that have depositions and things like that should use that route. It's really very important. It starts today. Yeah.
Emmanuel Fene, I would have loved to ask you what your reaction is to the spate of lootings across the country, but we don't have any more time. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. Maybe tomorrow morning we'll get a chance to look at that again. But before we go over to our next guest, Film Africa Festival returns for its 9th edition from Friday, 30th October to Sunday, 8th November 2020. This year's festival will be taking place primarily online. On Film Africa's mission remains the same, all the same, to offer a platform to showcase the best contemporary cinema from Africa and its diaspora. For Arise News, Afua Adam has more.
Film Africa is back, but of course it's 2020, which means it's not business as usual. With only limited socially distanced screenings taking place at a handful of venues across London, including here at the British Film Institute, or the BFI as it's more commonly known, most of the Film Africa programming will be taking place online, on social media and on the BFI player.
Ògo f'Olúwa lókè ọ̀run.
The debut feature film For Maria Ibn Pataki by 28-year-old director Damilola Oromogunje powerfully charts a woman's struggle with postpartum depression. It's one of only a handful of films that deal with this topic. At a time when the world finds itself in crisis, grappling with the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic, For Maria offers compelling insight into an individual's struggle to keep themselves from the grip of mental decline. For Maria Ibn Pataki is a deviation from the traditional Nollywood content that Nigeria is known for and gives an authentic presentation of working-class family life in Lagos. It's a rare treat and is a narrative of its time in the context of Black Lives Matter. Director Damilola presents a narrative with complexity and emotional depth, striking for a filmmaker of his generation.
During the period when I was thinking of making the film, I saw a thread on Twitter, Nigerian Twitter, where they were talking, like a bunch of women talking about their experiences while they gave birth, postpartum. And then it kind of like gave a new insight because these were like different women sharing their views, sharing their own take, how it went for them while they gave birth. Then I spoke to a couple of people that I knew that actually had passed through this, tried to get from their own point of view. And then I knew I couldn't write it. I wanted the female perspective to it also. So I co-wrote the film with a lady called Sore Femi. So, she came with like a woman point of view also, and then we tried to work on it. So it was basically like just researching, speaking to people online, reading different stories, and then, came up with the whole film.
Nadia Denton is an impact producer, film curator and author specialising in Nigerian cinema, and she coined the term Beyond Nollywood to refer to art house, experimental, animation, documentary, shorts and music videos from Nigeria and its diaspora. Nadia is one of the curators of Film Africa, and Damilola is part of the Beyond Nollywood collective that Nadia brought together. They're a group of filmmakers poised to supersede traditional Nollywood and make a name for themselves in the canon of world cinema. Nadia sees the enduring themes of For Maria as one of the key crossover appeals of this daring but little-known film from Nigeria.
You know, what I found so special about this film, and it certainly is the first film of this nature that I have seen coming out of Nigeria, is I feel like it's really a film of its time. You know, when we think about, the lockdown that we had earlier this year and that some of us are having to go back into, and all of the challenges that, especially mothers were having, childcare burdens are falling on them, difficulties with family, dealing with their children. And we kind of see a bit of a mirroring of this, even though it's not set in a COVID context. you kind of can see a bit of a mirroring of that. And I think particularly her own struggles with her mental health and just the depression. It's, you know, I've had many friends who through this whole experience of the pandemic and even Black Lives Matter have really struggled with, you know, understanding and placing themselves and being able to cope with dark thoughts and going into that dark place. And, you know, observing her struggling with, you know, dealing with going into that dark place and how to come out of it, I feel like is such a mirror, you know, to our society and where we are now worldwide.
Filmmaker and lecturer Asai Tamaklo is another one of Film Africa's curators, and she's based in Ghana. She says there's something for everyone in this year's festival lineup.
I think one of the things that works for Film Africa is the concept of inclusiveness. And so everybody gets represented somehow in the programming of Film Africa. And even with this year, even though we're dealing with COVID, if you look at our lineup, stories that are serving people in the diaspora, that serve people on the continent, that serve people of whatever gender they decide, or whatever physical handicaps, whatever challenges, whatever it is. So that's the beauty about Film Africa. Everybody has a place in whatever programming Film Africa puts together.
Whether you choose to venture out to a socially distanced screening or prefer to enjoy Film Africa online on your sofa, the festival promises an exciting programme of events, including director Q&As, panel discussions, industry sessions and masterclasses, showcasing the best cinema from across Africa and the diaspora. It's online and it's in selected cinemas across London from Friday the 30th of October until Sunday the 8th. Afia Adom, Arise News.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. In the past couple of weeks, businesses in Lagos, Nigeria's economic capital, have been practically brought to their knees following the chaos inflicted on it by hoodlums who infiltrated the #EndSARS movement. On Tuesday last week, several buildings, public and private, were razed down. Hundreds of buses, rapid transport vehicles, ferrying commuters to and from the outskirts of the city were also burnt down, while a reign of terror in various forms had been unleashed in almost all the streets in Lagos, with the hoodlums having a field day, harassing and extorting money from those carrying out essential services. Imposition of a 24-hour curfew by the state government. Business premises have been broken into and ransacked. And quite disturbingly, there has been an almost total absence of security personnel, including the police, in the streets. With the security situation still rife, the economic cost to the crisis continues to rise. Families are being denied the opportunity to make a living, while fear of the unknown is rapidly taking over. Joining us now to talk about what her agency is doing to reach out to persons whose businesses have been affected by this tragedy is Teju Abisoye, Executive Secretary, Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. Welcome to the program. Good morning, Teju.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. The Lagos State Commissioner of Information tells us that it will take about 1 trillion naira to address the damage that we have seen in the last few days in Lagos State. But the big concern is about the attack also, apart from public assets, on private assets. Is there any plan in place to provide some restitution for owners of malls, shops, businesses, who lost so much in the course of this crisis that we have seen. You are Executive Secretary of the Employment Trust Fund. What is the plan of the Lagos State government to provide jobs? Because a lot of people are saying unemployment fueled the crisis. If those young persons had jobs to go to and they had schools to go to, they probably would not have been on the streets.
Okay, thank you very much. So the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund has been established to address youth unemployment in Lagos State. Since 2016, we've been doing this strategically by supporting first small businesses. That's our flagship program with loans, business advisory support to make sure that they can increase productivity and thereby employ more people. We also train people with skills to make sure that they can take jobs that are available in the market. And then, of course, we support technology enhanced businesses. To date, we've supported over 11,000 businesses. We've created over 100,000 jobs. And the incidences in the last few days has been really sad because the whole state is affected. Infrastructure, small businesses, a lot of damage has been done. So as soon as things started clearing up, we reached out to the community, the small business owners, and said, look, what has happened? What can we do to help? The response was overwhelming. As of midnight yesterday, we had over 2,200 applications about damages that had been done to small businesses. Livelihoods have been affected. He also tells us that at least another 2,000 jobs have been affected, meaning that we're not even counting the bus drivers that were burnt down. So we have to quickly move. Working with the government have agreed that we're putting up an MSME recovery scheme, a grant scheme to these businesses that have been affected in partnership with the private sector. So we have Flutterwave partnering with us. A lot of the financial institutions, we have Access Bank, Polaris Bank. Banks have reached out to say, look, how can we make sure these MSMEs come back? Now, yes, we're going to offer them grants to make sure that they can get back to business, but they may still have to take additional loans because we need it to go round. Like I mentioned, we have over 2,000 applicants already affected that have actually submitted their applications that have been affected. So we need to make sure that as many businesses get back online and can begin to do their business again. What is interesting is just before this, LSCTF Board of Trustees had approved a LEAP program where we were already starting to provide interventions in specific sectors. So we had just launched the education one, where we're providing funding to schools to make sure that, post-COVID, they don't have any working capital issues, asset issues, anything that could really help them get back online and, start to work as a school. So yes, we have approvals. We're commencing sector-specific interventions. We were renewing loans for our affected beneficiaries. But this is live, and we've set up this fund for this recovery at this time.
Thank you, Taja. I was going to ask you whether you're granting grants or loans, and you've talked about grants and also those who might need to supplement those grants with loans. Are you still maintaining your interest rate of 5%?
The loan programs that are currently being run by LSCTF, we have a 5% on our loan programs. Now, in terms of partnerships, so what we've done again is so that we can increase our reach, we have gone to private institutions, commercial banks, to say, how can we partner with you, blend our interest rates so that people can still get low interest rate loans to do business effectively so that businesses can thrive. So rather than you getting a loan at 26%, we have other loans at 9%, 10% to make sure that businesses are getting these loans at very low interest rates and can do business and create, more importantly for us, create employment.
Right. It looks as though to me, and good to see you again, Teju, it looks as though to me that most of what LSCTF is targeting, residents, people that have a means of tracking them, businesses that are already on and things like that, sort of that proper social divide. But when you look at the average boy on the street that has nothing working for him, that doesn't even have an address in Lagos, but is just there on the street. What is LSETF going to do for those group of people? Because that's a ticking time bomb. You know, boys like that would definitely, while all of this was going on, being pushed to want to do, you know, things that are not right in society and the likes. I mean, not socially stratifying them now. What is LSETF doing for them? And I want you to speak to me about the LEAP program and how that was going on already and what has been done as regards that now.
Okay, thank you very much for that question, Rufai. So basically, while we have a headquarters that is situated in Alausa, we have offices in 26 local government areas. And the idea is to make sure that we can reach the grassroots, the bottom of the pyramid, anybody that lives in Lagos State. And part of our expansion plan is always around making sure that we're present in the 57 LCDAs, LGAs. It's very critical, like you mentioned, that we can reach the people who, for example, are not on social media, they don't have a laptop to apply for these loans. So we do have these liaison officers who have the job to make sure that they are getting people into the bracket, they're making them aware of the Lagos State government program to make sure they can be gainfully employed. There are a lot of young people, and one of our other programs, what we call the Lagos State Employability Support Program, which we do in partnership with the UNDP, GIZ, and the United States African Development Foundation, targets training young people, youths, with skills. Today, we've trained over 5,000, and we've placed over 60% in jobs. What we do is, in that particular program, is we start with the industry. What are the jobs available? What are the skills you need that you're not able to find in the market? Then we agree a curriculum in terms of what is deliverable and what they will consider experts in that particular skill. And then we train in partnership with vocational training centers across Lagos State. So it's very important that we do get these people into this kind of trainings. We get the jobs that are available. We're asking people, our LMIS, feel it about skills that you need so that we know what to train people, for what skills to train people in. It's very important that the private sector help us. Public, we do our bit. We put enough information on that platform so that we know what to train people in. And the LEAP program is called the Lagos Economic Acceleration Program. It was post-COVID, approved already by the government to make sure that businesses affected by the COVID lockdown can get up again. So what we call a pick-me-up. It was very sector-specific and in alignment, of course, with the economic sustainability plan of the federal government. And the idea around it is, let's take the sectors that can honestly create for us jobs quickly and begin to support them strategically. So you will see education, that's the one we've launched, because it still remains a high growth area where jobs are being created annually. We're looking at agriculture already, definitely infrastructure and construction, ICT, where we know that, look, it's a good place to invest in to make sure jobs are created. One other place we're looking at is also the renewable energy. This is now, we're trying to make sure that we make people convert to using LPG. And these are all things where we're saying that, look, how do we make sure that we're focusing on the sectors that actually have, that can create the jobs in the market now. Very critical that we're investing and we're supporting these businesses. That's what the LEAP is about. We launched with First Bank, our partner, a 5 billion fund for the education sector, where we're supporting private schools that need this money to get their teachers back in the classroom, the infrastructure for their students. All the other programs are in the work, and we're going to be launching them one by one in partnership with the private sector as well. Like I mentioned, this helps to expand our reach in terms of the volumes that we can actually do. Thank you.
Well, Taju, let's talk about what your agency calls the SME Recovery Fund in the aftermath of the NSAS protests. That's the big news out there, the fact that you want to provide support. Now, what's the amount that is available to you, or is open-ended? And how can persons whose shops suffered damages, how can they access that fund? What criteria have you put in place in terms of what makes somebody qualified or not qualified for access? In other words, is there a mechanism in place even for ascertaining whether the particular person that wants to access the fund was actually a victim or not?
Thank you very much. So the structure for this particular fund is that it's seeded by the Lagos State government. As of today, we have raised 1,530 million naira. And this is in partnership with the private sector, like I mentioned. Access Bank has committed, Polaris has committed to partner with us. And what we're doing is setting up a steering committee, which is already also being done. As I speak to you, we have confirmation from Faith Foundation, Endeavor, Nigeria, to sit on the steering committee. WinBees has confirmed. And the idea is that people have sent in their claims. The fact that you have filed a claim doesn't mean automatically you're entitled to the amount you're requesting for. What we will then do is evaluate each claim by using what we call the business development support partners. And they will go to the field, independent private sector partners as well, who would then come back with the report on each of these claims. These claims, when people are asking us for, off the top of my head, I saw one of those emails that said he's asking for 75 million. Obviously, that's not the kind of money we are going to be providing. We're looking at how do we make sure that first, infrastructure is back up. So we look at the claim. On the panel, on this steering committee as well, is expertise in infrastructure and construction that can give us real figures and feedback with respect to what people are asking for. So where the shop has been damaged and the BDSP has gone out, done the verification and come back, we'll look at the number the BDSP wants to, believes will be the right amount for each beneficiary. And then we will disburse that claim and publicize it. This particular fund is going to be there's going to be a dashboard that's going to be available for everybody to see the inflows and the outflows. We can't do this alone, and we know that because these are now grants, and we're an organization that is built and we want to be sustainable. We cannot afford to give out all our money, capital as grants. So we're looking for partners from the private sector to help build this fund in such a way that it will go round. A lot of businesses have been affected. We've seen the damage. I really don't think, some people were sounding very hopeless. I got an email that said, I am finished. We had to send her another email. You're not finished. There's life. And we will support you to make sure you're back up. So that's what the LSCTF is doing. We've put together this fund. We're asking people to join us. There's a steering committee consisting of private sector partners, especially those that are working in the MSME space, Faith Foundation, Endeavor Nigeria, WinBees are part of this steering committee to make sure there's transparency, there's accountability in disbursement of claims to beneficiaries. That really is, everybody's entitled to. People who can go online to fill the forms. We've sent out our liaison officers. We've sent people in fact, we have somebody collating names already, because we also wanted the local people there to verify these claims as well. So we're working we're already on the ground. Our officers are going around for people who can fill forms to make sure that they get their claims, take pictures, and document it for the BDSP when it's time for the BDSP to visit and verify these claims as soon as possible. We have received over 2,200 applications. If you go to our website, you can see how to apply. If you want to donate, it's on the website. On our social media handles, you can apply. And we're reaching out. We understand that this is very devastating. And that's one of the reasons why we can't stand back and say this has to be another loan program.
Okay.
But we believe we will do our best and make sure that we do something a grand size, and other things can then be, you can approach any of our partner banks.
Sorry to interrupt you. What's your website? What's your social media handle for the benefit of persons who would still like to get across to you.
Thank you very much. The website is lsctf.ng. All our social media handles is at lsctf on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, at lsctf, and our website is lsetf.ng, where you can get more information on how to apply for this fund and how to also donate if you're interested in participating to help small businesses recover.
Thank you so much for that, Teju. Really appreciate you for your time. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we shall be talking to Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, for his reactions to a number of challenges and issues facing Nigeria's unity at this point. Do join us after now.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now is Femi Falana, SAN. Indeed, since the EndSARS protest began as a youth uprising against police insensitivity and brutality, Nigeria seems to have gone through a negative spiral which has shaken the very foundations of the country's unity. At a point, those protests were infiltrated by hoodlums, and the upshot was a scaling up of violence across Lagos, the country's commercial nerve center. The rest, they say, is now history. This morning, we have the pleasure of again hosting Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and human rights activist. We'll try to find out, among other things, what he thinks about President Buhari's response to the crisis, the politicization of the protest, the suspected sponsoring of hoodlums to hijack the protests, and the ensuing breakdown of law and order, first in Lagos and now in an increasing number of states across the Federation. Good morning, Femi Falana, SAN. Thank you for joining us on the morning show. Good morning.
Good morning, Ruben. Morning.
Thank you for joining us. Well, quickly, in the intro, we were expecting that you will comment on the federal government's response to the alleged killings at the Lekki Tollgate Plaza. But again, over the weekend, on October 23 to be specific, the group that you lead, the Alliance Against COVID-19 and the Aftermath, ASCAB, known generally as ASCAB, issued a statement on the situation in the country. And you were very critical of how the federal government has responded. You say that the killings at the Lekki Tollgate, in your view, would seem to be reprehensible, condemnable, unacceptable. The government is insisting that there were really no killings. The governor of Lagos State says, well, one person died, another person suffered gunshot wounds, and at this moment, people have been asked to come forward and confirm. Does ASCAB have another evidence different from that of government to confirm indeed that Nigerians can talk about a Lekki massacre, in quotes?
Well, in the first place, we would like to console, express condolences to the families that lost their loved ones. And we're not talking of protesters alone. We're talking about policemen and soldiers who were killed in the course of duty, as well as other Nigerians, otherwise called hoodlums or miscreants, because they are citizens, But having said that, we have not, ASCAP has not jump the fray, to throw figures, around. But as far as we are concerned, the fact that protesters were shot at, cannot be tolerated in any civilized society. And so, and this is not the first time. And this is not the first time. And that is the painful aspect of it all. In 1971, when a student, Kunle Adekweju, was shot dead at the University of Ibadan by the police, it led to a crisis all over the place. In 1978, when Akintunde Ojo was shot dead at the University of Lagos by the police, there was a national crisis. Young people, in fact, on that day, Lagos, it was a black night for Lagos. The day the young man was buried. And among the atrocities perpetrated on that day by criminal elements, the then, 5 or 6 story building, customs headquarters in Nigeria, around Ikorodu Road, was not attacked, or not just attacked, was not burned, it was sprayed and sunk by highly placed criminal elements. In 1986, 4 students were killed in ABU. Again, young people all over the country protested. And all of them were always hijacked by criminal elements, so-called hoodlums and the rest of them. But in this particular instance, it's not a matter for a judicial commission of inquiry. The Lagos state government has gone beyond all that, unlike many other states in the country. We have the coroner's inquest law. And what the ASCAB has done is to contact the Honorable Attorney General of Lagos State. Can we activate the provisions of this law to have a scientific examination conducted? Because any unnatural death in Lagos shall be investigated. We know the killers. And of course, it's a very serious, to kill a human being, it's a very serious matter. And so you cannot, no government, no responsible government can deny that people were killed, or when you have not conducted an investigation. And for the Nigerian army, and I'm going to appeal to the authorities, to learn how to manage crisis, so that you don't fuel tension in the country. This is not the first time. This is not the first time. In 2015, under the Muhammadu Buhari administration, soldiers killed civilians in Zaria. And what were we told? A traffic offense. He said some people blocked the road. The chief of army staff wanted to pass, through that road. And for that reason, soldiers were asked to kill those who were on the highway. Again, these were Shiites. So people say, the nuisance is too much. And 7 people were alleged to have been killed by the army. According to them, according to the authorities, the Shiites wanted to assassinate the chief of army staff, General Tuko, Boratai. But what happened at the end of the day? In a commission of inquiry instituted by the Kaduna state government, it emerged that 347 people, mostly women and children, were killed, mowed down. And at the end of the day, no autopsy, no postmortem exercise. Their bodies were buried in an unmarked grave. Up to now, nobody has identified, nobody has exhumed the bodies for proper forensic examination. Nobody has come out to let us know who the family members are or the parents. Nobody has consoled the family member. It does not happen anywhere in the world. That is the highest crime against humanity. So when the Lekki incident happened, I wasn't going to, as Cap just said, there has to be a thorough investigation. And we have begun. We are setting up our own independent panel, having regard to the deniers, oozing out of, the seats of power. We are going to get to the root of the matter. Not just Lekki. We are coming out with facts and figures with respect to the entire killings in the country. But with respect to Lekki, People were shot at. Some of those young men and women have died. The facts will come out. And at that time, and that was why we made the statement, when the international community was being accused of, hasty comments and conclusions. We said, no, we hope the federal government of Nigeria will not be embarrassed colossally at the end of the day, at the end of the investigations. But please, let us insist, and you don't need to go and set up a judicial commission of inquiry. How many dead bodies are in Lagos? If you know other killings in the prisons, in the correctional center, Ikoyi Correctional Center, in Kirikiri Correctional Center, and we must now begin to interrogate. We must begin to ask questions. Why do we keep people in prison for years without trial, and you do not expel them to want to jump out of prison? Why do we send a big man to prison in what they call prison exchange? He doesn't get there. You ask some young men, you get big men and women, they don't get to the prison. You have young men to go and replace them. So please, let us take advantage of this unfortunate, this tragic situation to go back to the drawing table and reorganize our society. You cannot prevent riots, even in the most advanced country. In 2011, you have the Tottenham riots in the UK. There were riots, there was looting. And many cities in the UK. That night, London alone lost properties worth about £300 million. In the United States, over the protests over the brutal killing of a black man, George Floyd. There were riots in 140 cities in America. Billions of dollars were lost in terms of properties and assets. So you are going to have riots in countries where the rule of law is not allowed to be institutionalized. And that is what is going on. The NSAS campaign was totally unnecessary if the government had taken Nigerian people seriously. There have been complaints over the years of extrajudicial killing, of extortion, of illegal arrest and detention, of criminalization of innocent people. But nobody took the complaints seriously. The instruments of power, statutory bodies, that ought to have taken up these matters are disabled.
Indeed,
so
sir.
That is why you have this problem.
Indeed, sir. Martin Luther King did say that a riot is the language of the unheard. And to your point about the Shiites, which I've made repeatedly on this show, I'll quote another Martin, who was a pastor, Niemöller. Well, paraphrase him. First they came for the Shiites, and I said nothing because I'm not a Shiite. They came for me. There was nobody left to say anything. So I want you to talk now about this culture that we have seen repeatedly, as you have explained, using thugs, arming thugs for political expediency, which invariably backfires. And you've also talked about your in-depth investigation that you will conduct, because if the argument is about whether anybody died or not, we must agree that it will take a miracle for soldiers to shoot people at close range and all we had was injuries. There must be casualties. So I want to know what chance your fact-finding mission has of actually getting justice when we had the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces who did not even address the fact that thing happened at all. What kind of stone wall is that? Does that portend anything sinister for the future? Will there be justice? Will we ever know who gave the order, who those officers were, and exactly how many casualties there were?
Well, let me say that, and I want to believe very seriously, that those who deny ever going there. I mean, and we know that we have already identified the barracks where the soldiers left for Lekki. We've already identified the barracks. But let me just say this. The president, like all of us, the president was likely to have been told. Soldiers were not there. And so that was why I want to believe it was not addressed. And they said it was a rumor. And so the president asked the international community and all friends of Nigeria, don't jump to hasty conclusions. But I think the facts I imagine now that indeed soldiers went to Lekki, indeed They fired at protesters. Indeed, some of the protesters, at least two have been officially acknowledged to have died from gunshot injuries. And so by yesterday night, the presidency issued a statement that why the president didn't address it in his broadcast was because, the Lagos state government was going to investigate this matter and the federal government will cooperate. Yeah, all right, so okay. But like I said, this is not the first time. But, we have to understand, first of all, when the APC government was in opposition, it filed about 3 cases up to the Court of Appeal, from the High Court to the Court of Appeal, where both the Federal Court and the Court of Appeal held that soldiers in Nigeria have no business to get involved in elections. Last year, the Nigerian Army wanted to subject all Nigerians to what they call identification exercise. Everybody was asked to produce his ID card, a driving license, passport, and so on and so forth. And say, hey, come. Millions of Nigerians do not have any means of identity because of the negligence of the government. So we're going to have a civil war in our hands when soldiers have to go to the to the streets and be searching everybody. Say, no. I went to court. I went to the Federal Court. What did the army do? What happened? The army organized some lumpen elements in Abuja, sponsored them to demonstrate against me. It was covered in the media. Oh, Falana, leave the army alone. Stop your problem with the army. What happened? Again, Amnesty International issued a report of extrajudicial killing by the SARS and the army. Detailed names of those who were killed, names of casualties. What happened? The office of Amnesty International was occupied by thugs for weeks. I had to write a letter to the president, pleading, this is an international organization. If you have a problem with their figures, take it up with the management in London. But we cannot allow thugs to seize the office of an international human rights body. Again, shortly thereafter, the thugs were withdrawn. In this particular instance, and I've never seen it anywhere in the world, where in the federal capital of a country, where you have all the embassies, you have unmarked vehicles taking thugs around, and it was being filmed, and the thugs were being ferried by officials of the government. And at the end of the day, we were simply it wasn't the State Security Service. In Lagos, it wasn't the Nigerian Army that shot. That is such deniers do not portray us as a serious country. Because it is the duty of the government, anywhere in the world, to trace criminals and ensure that they are brought to book, assuming without conceding that the State Security Service was not involved in the show of shame in Abuja. It's not enough to deny. The faces are clear by now. Those guys who set out to put the government in unbelievable embarrassment ought to have been arraigned in court so that the government can distance itself from criminality. But that was not all.
Okay.
Some of the boys who were arrested by the protesters in Abuja, clearly admitted, confessed, that they were giving money at Jabi Market to go and attack protesters. Okay. It was the same thing in Lagos. Okay. In Alausa,
okay, sir.
Some people went there in buses to attack protesters. Okay, now, once there was a free reign of thuggery in town, other criminal elements took advantage, including political interest, including ex-convicts who wanted to bail out their colleagues, who wanted to free their colleagues, and the country is in trouble today.
Okay.
So we must now go back to the drawing table. How do we manage crisis?
Okay. And
how do we reduce riots?
Yes.
Yes. These are the issues.
Those are the issues. Very, very well said. But I just want to dial back based on a couple of things you've said. Number one, you said there's a coroner inquest law on ground in Lagos.
Yes, in Lagos State.
And
since 2007.
Since 2007. One would have thought that the Attorney General of the state will have said, let's invoke that law. But now, they're having a Lagos, it's happening at the Lagos Court of Arbitration in Lekki. They're having an inquest, a judicial panel, into the incident at Lekki. So I want to make sense of what is happening. Is it that we don't know the laws to put in place and have a coroner inquest into what happened, and now we are not having a judicial panel? Secondly, I remember another incident that happened in 2003. You were part of it because you were the lawyer that took the case to court. As regards protests, tear gas used and the likes, and the candidate of a certain political party then came out, and we all got the all clear that the police, you don't need to get permission from the police before you go on a protest. But juxtapose that with what happened on the streets, and even allegations that at some point, in the bid of keeping peace, police attacked some people. What sense do you make of all of this?
No, our problem is that our governments have no faith, no fidelity in the law, in the rule of law. Once a judgment of a court has been delivered, Section 287 of the Constitution provides that that judgment shall be obeyed by all authorities and persons in a country. Yes, you are right. In fact, it was General Muhammadu Buhari, as it then was, that led the leaders of the AMPP to brief us to challenge police permit for rallies, because they had a rally in Kano on the 22nd of May, 2003, under the Olusegun Obasanjo administration. The rally was violently dispersed. People were tear gassed. In fact, one of the leaders couldn't survive the trauma because he was asthmatic. Now, what happens thereafter? The police appealed. We went to court. We won the case in 2006. The police appealed. We won the appeal in 2008. We then went to the authorities. I don't want to be accused of having allowed people to have unrestricted freedom. Therefore, can we have places in all the state capitals in the country designated for rallies? Just like Hyde Park in London, you can abuse a hell out of the Prime Minister, at the Hyde Park. But here, we had Gani Fawehinmi Park in Ojota, where we had the anti-Jonathan administration's protest in 2012. In Abuja, the Unity Fountain used to host, bring back our guest campaigners and all that. But what happened? The fountain, the Unity Fountain has been fenced off so that nobody can go there to protest. In Lagos, Gani Fawehinmi Park has been fenced so nobody can go there to protest. So we must now agree. How do we allow citizens in the National Assembly? In the National Assembly, there is a large lawn to accommodate those who may come with their petitions, who may want to protest. You cannot enter the National Assembly today. So, the National Assembly complex. So, they make it impossible for us. You cannot protest. Meanwhile, they say you have your right to protest. As if that was not enough. You hire thugs in broad daylight to go and harass and kill protesters. You hire the army, or you deploy the army to go and attack civilians. Under Section 217 of the Constitution, the army can only come into crisis in town if there is an insurrection and the police cannot contain it. The president of the country will give the order, Section 217 of the Constitution. This time around, it is very clear, the president never authorized anybody to shoot, to go and attack protesters. And by the way, I've been taking part in protests for 42 years, since my undergraduate days in Ife. There was no protest that the police wanted to stop, that they couldn't stop by the use of tear gas. You'll be surprised to know that many of our police commands do not have a canister of tear gas. I don't know why people can run their own system aground completely. No rubber bullet, no water cannon. How do you police a country without the management of crowd control? It's basic when you are training police men and women. And by the way, in the Second Republic, we had the mobile unit, MOPOL, established. What has happened to you now have all manners of units? SARS, all manner, anti-cortis, a unit, all manners. So, because the MOPO people are otherwise engaged. So, we must now find out, persuade the March 27, 2015. And it provides that during protests, the police shall provide adequate security, so as to prevent so-called hoodlums from hijacking protests. This time around, the young people were not protected, as if that was not enough. What happened? You had thugs hired to attack them. And when that did not stop them, the army was moved there. And that is what is going on, which has caused this unfortunate
Mr. Falano, you said a lot, but I hope you are also aware that the federal government of Nigeria, in their response, has also been saying that there's a lot of fake news out there. And in paragraph 4 of the statement by ASCAP, the group that you lead, there was a reference to the social media. I would like you to comment on that, because many of these allegations, the federal government insists, is nothing but fake news. Even Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, when he came out and he visited the governor of Lagos State, he also talked about fake news. And then in paragraph 9 of that statement by ASCAP, the group talks about there is no need to replace state terrorism with individual terrorism. Over the weekend is that individual terrorism has overtaken, as it were. What do you also say about that? With people looting people's homes, destroying private assets, and yet claiming that they are expressing their anger and objection to how Nigeria is run?
Well, in that same statement, we actually condemned all forms of violence. We condemn violence in all its ramifications. And that was why we're pleading with Nigerians. Don't replace state terrorism with individual terrorism, Let us embrace the rule of law. Give us time to get to the root of this criminality. We are going to expose those who kill our young ones. We are going to expose those who kill soldiers, those who kill policemen, and indeed, those who kill other Nigerians. And that is the only way you can run a democratic society. With respect to the statements credited to all authorities in Nigeria, it can be so funny to say, hoodlums have hijacked protests. For goodness sake, who created hoodlums? During elections, area boys are called thugs, recruited by politicians, armed to the teeth, drugged. And after the election, they are dumped. They now turn the weapons against the people. Some of them get engaged in armed robbery. I'm sure you know about the Offa robbery a couple 3 years ago. Those who went to rob in Offa, it doesn't happen anywhere in the world, are political thugs. And what happened? They say, no, and we are not robbers, we are political thugs. After that, a heinous crime where 33 people, including 9 policemen and a pregnant woman, were killed. The boys went to hide in the government lodge. I've never heard that anywhere in the world. Now, when you use these boys during election, they are called thugs. Meanwhile, Section 227 of the Constitution has prohibited thuggery in the country. The Electoral Act has criminalized thuggery, but no thug is arrested in our country. On the contrary, politicians recruit them. It was only during riot that we call them hoodlums, but they are thugs during election. On other occasions, they are area boys. But what this has, what we are all challenged now, because nobody is safe in our country. Nobody. We are all challenged because look at the way policemen were brutalized, who are serving the country. So there's nobody that can support the gory scenes that we have witnessed in the social media. But for government, we just have to, the government has to be more proactive. Having regards to our experience in the past, when there was no social media, I've told you what happened in 1971 in Ibadan, in 1978 in Lagos, in 1986 in Zaria. It's not about social media. It is that all over the world, the extrajudicial killing, premeditated murder by the The parents came to me. I couldn't access the court in Kenya. The boy was an undergraduate, just like Nigeria. The police saw him on the highway, driving a car, and they wanted to take bribe for him. He was killed. He was taken to the station and got a shot. I have just contacted a human rights lawyer in Kenya, wrote to the government from here. There was no response. So the lawyer is going to court next week. So this is what is going on all over the world. So Nigeria cannot be an exception. But for those who are talking of hijacking by hoodlums, because there's no way you can prevent revolt or riots. But it is the ability of a state, of a government, to contain and reduce the damage that may occur that marks you out as a civilized government. If you have no tear gas to disperse a crowd, young boys and girls who were not armed, just a tumultuous crowd, then you can't say you are a modern state, or that your state, or that they say that Lagos is working. If you do not have effective fire brigade service, then you say, oh yeah, we have been told some were burned. How dare you to stop a fire brigade vehicle from moving, to stop fire from killing people and destroying properties? Ruben, in 1980, the net, a 32-story building on Marina, went on fire. We didn't have the means to quench the fire until fire on its own. And that was how it was stopped. That is what has happened. A stone's throw from net building, MPA building. And I was telling my wife, my dear, this happened 40 years ago. That means we have not learned anything. Yet, between Broad Street and Marina, you have the highest number of high-rise buildings in Nigeria. So what have we done as a government to protect them? So the point I'm making therefore is this. Yes, those who, because we must also, in looking at what happened, you must look at possible political, angle to the destruction. You must look at the class character. You can see the ordinary people. They went to look for COVID-19 palliatives. And nobody can explain the hoarding of such items meant for the poor, not bought by the government, but bought from money contributed by people in the private sector to help the poor. Other countries are giving cash transfer. America, the bastion of capitalism, they're just trying to conclude arrangement to send money to people, all vulnerable people in America. They did that the last time. This one is going to be about 2.3 trillion. But what do we get? So that the government must also be very careful that you don't provoke the people to violence. And those are the lessons we have to learn. While we are condemning violence, let us see how we can prevent reoccurrence of such violent disruption of the peace of the country.
Thank you, sir. I'd like your thoughts on the discovery in warehouses across the country of COVID-19 palliatives. In view of the fact that you'll recall about a month ago, the ICPC announced that they found 2.67 billion naira for the Nigerian school feeding program stashed in private bank accounts. What kind of charges can be brought against those found in connection with this looting, this different form of looting?
It's almost like a crime against humanity. Just like some public officers have diverted money meant for providing palliatives for people who have been displaced in their homes, internally displaced people. I mean, you ask yourself, what level of stealing is this? And so this is why we are worried that we just have the ruling class, members of the ruling class in Nigeria will have to have a serious rethink that there are certain areas you must not get to. In looting the treasury of a country, there are areas you must not get to. And appeal, and I want to appeal here for warehouses that has not been touched. If palliatives have been stored, I'm going to appeal to all the state governments in Nigeria to emulate the example of the Sokoto state government that simply, in view of this challenge, please go and distribute all the palliatives. How can a government, how can you hold in domain? I mean, this is intolerable. It's provocative. And so our government will have to apologize to the Nigerian people. That you see the crowd in Jos, for goodness sake. I was worried. How are we going to avoid stampede? And stampede has happened in some places. Lives have been lost needlessly. But let me just say something. While I sympathize with those who have lost goods, while I sympathize with families that have lost their loved ones, we must make a case out of what has happened. And I want to say this. And I'm talking about our law, the development of our law. Those who have lost goods, those who have lost properties that were not insured, should put sentiments apart. Don't say because the government in Abuja, it's our government, it's our party that is ruling the country. No. The law has left that state. Every Nigerian is entitled to protection of his or her life and property. That's the law. Once, through negligence, through lack of proper policing, you lose your properties, the government must pay. I'm not talking of humanitarian assistance. As a matter of law, if anybody dies in the process, the family members have the right to make a claim. And we have cases where this has been decided by our courts. So let nobody in Abuja say, oh, this is, these properties were destroyed by hoodlum. It will never happen again. No. You have a duty to compensate those who have lost their properties. You have a duty to compensate those who have lost their breadwinners or potential breadwinners. That is the position of the law. So that next time, the government will have to take measures to prevent this kind of unfortunate tragic situation.
Okay, so real quickly, I mean, you might want to react to this after I ask the Buckaroos. Some people say it's an act of God. Can you count as an act of God? And secondly, I want you to speak
No, this is not an act of God. This is due to the negligence of the government. It's not an act of God. Because every government in the world knows there may be a riot. There's a riot post election violence going on in Conakry.
Let me quickly.
So you're in Guinea. So you can't say that we are not going to deal with it. And so that's why the government exists to defend all of us, to protect our life and property.
Okay, let me quickly deal with this. Opportunists taking over this situation to push very rabid tribal sentiments and fault lines. What's your take on all of that?
Very, very dangerous. And I want to say here, we're going to send a report to the Lagos State government of the roles played by young men and women, a few of them, that douse the tension. Otherwise, there will have been a very serious ethnic backlash. Because even when the protest was going on, again, this is the language of the government. You try to, promote divide et impera tactics, divide and rule. Oh, some governors, oh no, this is an affair of the South. Oh, we don't want SARS to be abolished. We like SARS in our area. Oh, these are some, why is this girl in Northerner joining Southerners police brutality is the same all over the place. And it's worse. It's worse where people are not well educated. And so it's a general phenomenon in the country. And from what you have seen, the young men and women who protested did it all over the country. You have protests all over the states, in Adamawa, in Kano, in Kogi, in Kaduna, Ekiti, Anambra, South, everywhere. And so that means, with respect to police brutality, the young people in Nigeria are saying enough is enough. With respect to the palliatives, that is the class character of we must all look at. In Jos, where people have fought and where people have been killed on religious or ethnic ground, this time around they were united. Poverty united them. And so that crowd, made up of indigenes, others who are not from Plateau State, Christians and Muslim and traditional worshippers. So that means we now have to, the government has to learn from the people. I mean, there was one fellow who almost caused a problem in Lagos. From nowhere. He didn't know about any protest going on in Nigeria. Staying in the comfort of the West. Tried to say, oh, go and be burning property. And that was a very dangerous situation. Some of us had to contact some friends. Can you tell this fellow not to cause problem for the country? Of course, he later withdrew the nonsensical statement. Of course, there were young men and women that moved out to neighborhoods to plead with them.
Well,
let us not destroy the country.
On that note, thank you very much, Femi Falana, SAN, for joining us this morning on The Morning Show. Thank you very much indeed for your insights. We'll take a short break now. When we return, Oji Okwe will be here with details on what's trending. Stay with us.